table. Lesson from the pool table. Vincent Lim.
Do you know what this is? Please raise your hand if you know. Oh, that appears to be a lot. Yes, this is a pool cue. And if you know this game well, you know that it requires passion, perseverance to do well. Contest chef and judges, ladies and gentlemen, today I'd like to share with you a lesson that I've learned from the game of pool. It was 1st of May, 2 years ago, when I was with a group of colleagues. When one of them came walking up to me in a pub, and he asked me to play pool with the rest of the pool patrons. I don't normally play pool in pub. But before I was able to say no, he said, "Vincent, let's see if you are as good as we think you are." Oh, there's a lot of ego in that statement. And because of that, I actually agreed. I walked down to the pool table, wrote my name in a scribble, and made all the people there tremble. I did that one by one. I was lucky, of course. But it felt really good to show off. But good things didn't last. After some time, my performance dropped. And when I missed my first shot as a Toastmaster, I always learn from my mistakes, and I analyze the root cause. I looked at the pool cue from the pub, and I saw that there were some dents. It was not well maintained. You see, when I was training in the pool saloon, I always used a world-class equipment, which is always maintained at tip-top condition. And therefore, when I'm using a substandard cue, I couldn't perform. I found the root cause and I was happy to move on. The second time when I missed a shot, I looked at the lightings. It was not very bright. You see, when I was training, lighting was one of the most important factors. It is always bright to ensure that players like me are able to see the placing and the spacing clearly. But in the pub, we are not supposed to see things that clearly. We're supposed to look at people, especially the opposite sex, with imagination. We imagine that we are all very good looking. And because of that imagination, I missed some shots. The third time, I knew exactly that it was the beer. You see, when I was training, alcohol was prohibited to ensure that players always have a clear mind. But in the pub, if I don't drink some beer, I'll be kicked out by a bartender. So as you can see, those are external factors. I was not to be blamed. At that point of time, a cheerful young man came. He wrote down Francis as his name, and he asked me for a game. I said, "Of course, Francis, please come." Well, Francis started the game with a weird posture. You see, most of us pool players would have put one of our palms on the table, the cue between our fingers, and then slightly like this, in a rather sexy position. Francis was different. Francis put his entire arm on the table, the cue on top of his wrist, then he has to bend rather low to aim or shoot. This cannot be a comfortable position. In fact, to see from his eyes that he was in pain. But Francis continued. He focused entirely on the game. And he treated every single shot as if it is the last shot of his life. Every single execution was as if it is concerning life and death. The game took slightly longer than expected. But no one in the pub was complaining, because all of them were looking at the game with anticipation, enthusiasm, and empathy. Empathy because Francis was not an ordinary person. Francis was a person with only 5 fingers. You see, for some reasons, all 5 fingers on his left hand were amputated. I was playing with a handicapped person. Francis was a disabled man in medical terms. But Francis was far from being disabled. He focused on what he can do instead of what he can't do, with concentration so focused, focus so intense. That night, he scored a perfect game against the beat. When he won that game, every single person in the pub, strangers or not, stood up and gave him a standing ovation. They cheered for him as he emerged the real champion. Ladies and gentlemen, the sight of him made me feel embarrassed. The sight of him made me rethink my mental hurdles. Just not so long ago, I was still complaining about the pool cue. I was slightly dented. The lighting was too dim and I had a few beer. But Francis, with the same condition as me, and more, with a terrible handicap, and did not give up. He focused on what he can do instead of what he can't do. Perseverance, he achieved unthinkable goals. Ladies and gentlemen, that event is a true event that's happened to me and my group of colleagues. That night, we learned something that we'll never forget. You see, there'll be times where things don't go our way. There'll be times where it is just not fair to us. And we are tempted to say, we can't have this, we can't do that. It was not my fault, I wasn't to be blamed. Ladies and gentlemen, we could recall the story of Francis, the pool player with only 5 fingers, who did not give up and focus on what he can do instead of what he can't do. What about us? Please think about how much more can we achieve? How far further can we go? If only we can do that. So ladies and gentlemen, please repeat after me. Focus on what we can do instead of what we can't do. Focus on what we can do instead of what we can't do. Contact check.